Distinguished guests and fellow delegates, welcome to the World Federation of United Nations Associations International Model United Nations Conference 2018. Welcome. My name is Angela Min Yi Ho, and I am humbled to be serving as your Secretary General for this conference. For the past 9 months, I have had the opportunity to work with an extremely phenomenal team of leaders who are preparing to welcome you here in New York this week. I'm honored to be standing here alongside a Secretariat team of 35 Model UN leaders, representing a total of 17 countries and 22 languages. I'm privileged to have the opportunity to work with WIMUN, an international not-for-profit organization whose mission is to support the work of the UN. I am also grateful to be here today with the support and mentorship of Best Delegate, a global model UN organization that believes in the mandate of MUN for all. Most of all, I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be standing here today addressing all of you, WIMUN 2018 participants. There are more than 1,000 unique individuals in this room, coming from 44 countries and representing 174 member states in the United Nations. The most important value, perhaps, shared by all of these groups is our collective belief in the power of diversity. Personally, I was first exposed to the concept of diversity when I moved to Toronto, Canada, one of the most diverse cities and countries in the world. As a Chinese immigrant, I was and continue to be a first-hand witness and beneficiary to what diversity can do when it welcomes you with open arms. Please take a second and join me in looking at your fellow peers sitting next to you today. This week, you'll be meeting people who look different, sound different, and perhaps think differently. But diversity is about acknowledging and respecting our differences, to be proud of who we are and to respect the identity of other people surrounding us, and celebrating the global community that we collectively create. Diversity is also a reality for diplomats working at the UN. Here at WIMUN, we are proud to provide to you the largest and most accurate simulation of the real United Nations in the world. But in addition to learning about the UN's institutional structure, agenda, procedures, the most important and lasting takeaway from WIMUN is your experience of developing consensus with people who are both similarly minded and people who differ in our beliefs. It is my sincere hope that you will walk away from this conference with more than just a picture in the GA Hall, as I'm sure that will be very memorable, but also the experience of responsibility, the responsibility that accompanies sitting here in this historical venue, where political and global leaders that come before us have transcended political, cultural, and national boundaries to work together on the world's most pressing issues. On behalf of the WIMUN 2018 Secretariat, Best Delegate, and WIMUN, we thank you for joining us here today, and we can't wait to see you immerse yourselves in this real UN experience. Please don't hesitate to let us know if at any point during the conference we can do anything in our capacity to support and empower you to make the most out of WIMUN 2018. To conclude my address, I am honored to present to you a gift from a very special guest who is joining us today in spirit. The Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has kindly recorded the following message for you. Please enjoy.
Thank you for taking part in the model United Nations. Our world enjoys remarkable opportunities to advance common progress. Sustainable Development Goals are our blueprint for dignity, prosperity, and a healthy planet. But we, the peoples, face many challenges, from armed conflicts to the nuclear threat, and climate change is moving faster than we are. Inequality is on the rise, while solidarity is on the decline, and so multilateralism is more important than ever. Empowering young people is an imperative. As you stand up for our shared values, the United Nations stands with you. Please accept my best wishes for a successful Model United Nations Conference.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. It is now my honor to introduce the Secretary General of the World Federation of United Nations Associations, Mr. Bonio Gamal Hamadi, to deliver an opening remark to our conference participants. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gamal Hamadi.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary General. Thank you so much. I'd like to recognize the Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka, Ambassador Amritruham Pereira. Thank you so much for being here. Likewise, Consul General of Denmark, Anna Dorte Rigelsen. They will address you, but thank you so much for being here, and just want to open up by thanking both missions of Denmark and Sri Lanka for co-hosting this event as well. On my way over here, I came to think of I have a granddaughter now. Her name is Leonora. She's about 1.5 years, and she still poos in her pants. Or technically, I mean, she poos in her diapers. But it seems that in many ways, we as a global community do the same thing. We keep messing up a lot of these global opportunities, so we have a lot of global poo on our hands. We have humanitarian disasters, we have problems, obviously, as you know, with climate change, we have warfare, we have human rights abuses. So it seems that in some respects we're still infants. While my granddaughter in the beginning, of course, was unaware what she was doing, now she's come to the state where she even knows before she's going to produce that that's going to happen. She sometimes even forewarns, and I think shortly she will learn to control it. I hope that you that are here now, over 1,000 participants, it's amazing. It's the biggest WIMUN in New York that we've had, coming from more than 60 countries, that you're going to change this global situation. You're here to negotiate, to discuss, have your say and your perspective on some of the most important issues that the United Nations is dealing with. You know, WIFUNA, the World Federation of UN Associations, we are global citizens for a stronger United Nations. I count you as part of our family, and we have been working for a stronger and better United Nations for as long as the UN has existed, through awareness raising, advocacy, global campaigns. We try to engage more and more global citizens to pursue that goal. On a global, regional, national, and local level, the way to do this is to empower and engage as many people as possible in this process. One of the ways, of course, that we try to do this, especially with young people, is through Model United Nations. We believe Model UN is a very powerful tool, one of the best for students to not only learn about the UN, but also develop skills to become leaders in their communities at home and to connect the global with the local. And WIMUN is uniquely equipped to provide you with the insights and tools you need in order to understand the work of the United Nations better, to learn how you can start to play a part in building a stronger and better United Nations, a United Nations that also is constantly reforming to be better, to be fit for purpose. And first and foremost, WIMUN utilizes the WIMUN approach for all our simulations, making this conference and all WIMUN conferences the most accurate simulation of the United Nations. So we're excited about this. We're very excited that you are here. And we're also excited to welcome committee guest speakers who are all leading experts within the UN system on the topics that you will be discussing, and who will be able to provide you further with unique insights about the working procedures of the UN and the issues that you will be negotiating about. And additionally, for the first time in WIMUN history, we're delighted to offer those of you who have attended WIMUN previously to participate in content-focused trainings led by WIFUNA staff members, during which You will learn how you can utilize, your enthusiasm and knowledge and dedication to the cause of the UN after WIMUN, and stay involved both with the work of WIFUN and the United Nations. You only need to look at the list of notable Model UN alumni to see that for many Model UN participants, their involvement with international affairs and the work of the UN continues well beyond the participation in the Model UN. Former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, former US President Barack Obama, just to name a few, are great examples of this. But you don't need to be president of your country or the Secretary General of the UN to make an impact. There are many other ways in which you can make an impact. We hope to present some of those ways to you, both in the sessions, but also, of course, through the thematic debates and committees that you will be involved with. You will be hopefully involved locally, nationally. WIFUN, we have quite an extensive and far-reaching youth network, and we have over 100 national UN associations. There are many ways for you to stay engaged, and I really invite you all to reach out, both to WIFUN and to our national UN associations around the world. Your participation in WIMUN shows really that you're committed to the work of the UN and are embracing leadership roles among your peers already. I really applaud your efforts in this regard and hope that you will continue to stay involved, whether it's in the future at home in the next few days or in your professions or studies, to discuss issues relating to the UN in general, but also, of course, to the theme that you're going to be discussing here, which is sustaining peace. When the UN was founded in 1946, it was with a vision to create a better world for every living being on this planet. And one key element, obviously, after the Second World War especially, was this vision of a peaceful world, one in which we can coexist in unity. And in effort to reach this goal, the UN also established UN peacekeeping operations in 1948, which are deployed around the world to maintain peace and security. And as I indicated in the beginning, unfortunately, this goal has not been achieved in many ways yet. If we look at the situation in Syria, in Sudan, and South Sudan, and Yemen, for example, the situation in Myanmar, we are faced with daily reports of people suffering, alarming humanitarian situations, and innocent civilians dying. And nonetheless, thousands of people at the United Nations and elsewhere around the world work tirelessly towards a more peaceful world. Whether it's the UN Secretariat staff here and the missions that are working here, the 106,000 men and women who work for one of the UN's many peace operations around the world. Many are engaged in this work at the UN and also, of course, in many NGOs and other organizations around the world. It's important, though, to remember that despite the fact that many positive steps have been taken, some issues remain unsolved and require your attention, our attention, and dedication. These new types of conflicts that are there, warfare that is emerging in different new ways, UN peace operations, especially, of course, in this context, need to learn how to adapt to these new challenges. I think it's especially interesting, the theme for this conference, which is sustaining peace. The idea with sustaining peace and the resolutions that were adopted both by the Security Council and the General Assembly is trying to put a new lens on the issue of peace. Not only look at peace building, which is perceived as something that is happening after conflict, but sustaining peace is something that every country in the world needs. Sustaining peace means that we have to look at those processes that are needed in order to have a peaceful society, not only to create peace after conflict, but what are those values, what are those processes, what are the governance methods that are needed in order to create this peace. So we need to have a much more holistic view of what peace is in order to be effective and to create a peace that is not only something that lasts for a short time, but is sustainable in a very, very long time. During the conference here, you will discuss coherence in conflict, promotion and protection of human rights, empowering women, the situation in South Sudan, for instance, and many other issues in the next few days. And all of these issues tie into how to sustain peace in this work. So it's going to be very fascinating to see what your recommended solutions are and how you're going to debate these issues. I really hope that after the conference, each one of you will choose to become an ambassador of multilateralism and the work of the United Nations. These are very troubled times when the whole concept of multilateralism is being questioned and in some cases attacked. So it's important that you who are here, who have the knowledge, who are in the process of developing more and more skills, and who have the dedication, the capacity to support this, that you decide to become ambassadors and global citizens who support the work of the United Nations. I'm sure that your discussions here will be interesting and intense and fruitful, and I wish you great success and also fun during the upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General of WIFUNA. Next, it is my distinct honor to introduce the first of our two keynote speakers, His Excellency Dr. Amrit Rohan Pereira, the Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka to the United Nations. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Mr. Secretary General of WIFUNA, distinguished guests, dear youth delegates, it is a distinct pleasure to be with you this evening at the opening of the International Model United Nations organized by the World Federation of United Nations Associations. The theme for this year's Model United Nations, SDGs and Sustaining Peace, touches upon two of the most important and critical topics being addressed at the United Nations today. Therefore, your discussions over the next 4 days are indeed very timely and relevant. The world today is facing uncertain and unsettling times. The complex, interrelated crises of climate change, human displacement, and natural disasters affect the world on a broader and more accelerated scale than ever before. These challenges call for the international community to collectively address them. However, just when the importance of multilateralism is being accentuated, its foundations are being challenged. In an unsettling environment of hostility and mutual suspicion, the role of the United Nations continues to be more important than ever. The United Nations remains a compelling embodiment of the values of multilateralism, a steadfast platform of which the international community can come together and work collectively towards the vision of a world that is more safe, sustainable, and secure. As young delegates about to engage in the process of debate and resolution writing and negotiating, you will undoubtedly encounter the concept of consensus building, a cornerstone of multilateralism. The concept signifies the process of taking time to listen and engage with the viewpoints that are different to one's own and work to reach compromises in the path forward towards a common vision. This is a central pillar of the United Nations and the multilateralism that this organization embodies. However, we note that there is an increasing trend towards adoption of resolutions, including resolutions on critical socio-economic issues by a recorded vote. This signifies a gradual weakening of consensus building in the negotiating process of these resolutions. I therefore urge you to actively engage with conflicting viewpoints and attempt to reach a consensus in the mock negotiations that you will be engaged in at the Model UN. As you are undoubtedly aware, one of the primary ways in which the United Nations is currently working towards the vision is through the framework of the 2030 Agenda or the Sustainable Development Goals. The 17 goals that are set out in the agenda delineate targets and indicators mapping a transformational course for development. The Sustainable Development Agenda and the SDGs are intrinsically interconnected to the vision of a sustained peace. As was just mentioned by the Secretary General, at the United Nations, the framework of sustaining peace is founded on the concept of peace building. Around 2 decades ago, the process of peace building was understood as a post-conflict mechanism, which is a time-bound process. However, the concept has since transformed to focus on all stages of a conflict cycle: before, during, and after an armed conflict. Sustaining peace now focuses on the importance of having a long-term, comprehensive vision in the responses to violent conflict, to end vicious cycles of lapse and relapse. The transformation of the UN peace-building architecture allows for peace-building efforts to take place even when there is no ongoing conflict. In addition, it allows for the involvement of a broader group of actors with the peace and security agenda. And one of these key groups is young people like yourselves. In December 2015, the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security, a resolution which recognized for the first time the significant and powerful role that young women and men play in the prevention of conflict, in peace building, and in the maintenance of international security. At a time when young people have been portrayed as a group particularly vulnerable to forces of violent extremism and radicalization, this resolution made a contrary and powerful assertion that young people should not solely be seen as part of the problem, but be incorporated as part of the solution. The solution should be focused on several primary areas of youth involvement and rights, including youth participation, protection of youth, measures for the prevention of youth being involved in violence, creating partnerships for youth involvement, and disengagement and reintegration of youth affected by armed conflict. Therefore, it is evident that the role of youth is firmly ingrained in the UN's peace and security agenda. It also highlights the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thus, the time has never been more apt for young people to make their voices heard and take part in creating a world that is more inclusive, tolerant, and united. I urge you to consider your role and your contribution in making the future of unity, peace, and prosperity possible. As Secretary General Antonio Guterres recently stated at the UN, and I quote, "We need greater unity and courage. Unity and courage to meet today's most urgent needs, to ease the fears of the people we serve and set the world on track towards a better future," unquote. In realizing this vision, the youth of today has a central role to play. I wish you, your event, all success in the coming days. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira. It is now my honor to introduce Her Excellency, Ms. Anne Dorothy Rigelson, the Consul General of Denmark to the USA here in New York City. Please join me in welcoming her.
Madam Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, you are absolutely the best looking delegates in this building. And I would like to warmly welcome you to this year's Model United Nations Conference. Denmark is a proud sponsor to this conference, and I'm happy to see so many dedicated students gathered here today. At this conference, you will be simulating the work of the United Nations and some of the decisions that are made in this building. However, in just a few years, many of you will play an important role in making the decisions that will shape the future of your countries and of our world. That does not mean that you should wait to get involved and make your voices heard. 3 years ago, the leaders of the world agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals reflecting what we want the world to look like in 2030. It is our shared future, but even more so, it is your future. It is our shared responsibility to achieve these goals, but in order to do so, it is absolutely essential that youth are active participants rather than passive observants. It is essential that development is created by and with youth, so that young people become owners of the development process that involves them. In other words, that involves you. Denmark firmly believes in the importance and the power of youth in achieving the global goals. It has therefore, my country, made youth one of the key priorities for its development cooperation. Your generation has been seen as a challenge. There are 1.8 billion youth worldwide today. Young people who want jobs, food, families, and to play an active role in our societies. By getting involved in the development efforts, either in your own countries or in partnership with youth in other countries, you can prove that your generation will be the solution rather than the challenge. You have an exciting 3 days ahead of you. I encourage you to use these days to learn, to listen, to voice your opinions, and, as you heard several times up here, to remember, have fun while doing it. I have one final plea for you. Once you travel home after this conference, do not leave your commitment, your enthusiasm, your ideas in New York. Get involved and be active participants in creating the future we need. Take New York with you. Good luck.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your passionate remarks and for your continued support of WIMUN 2018. Now, it is my honor to introduce to you several members of my Senior Secretariat team. These are my peers who come from around the world who are distinct Model UN leaders in their own communities, and they have been the backbone of this conference. I'm extremely excited to begin by introducing you to Ms. Elena Kiselova, who is the Undersecretary General for General Assembly Affairs and Conference Management. Please join me in welcoming her.
Dear delegates, Secretariat officers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you at WIFUNA International Model United Nations 2018, the most accurate UN simulation in the world. Throughout the history of the humanity, the world has been going through constant changes, followed by new emerging issues and challenges. Today, the list of the United Nations agenda contains a wide range of topics covering numerous aspects of people's lives, such as human rights, sustainable development, maintenance of international peace and security. The United Nations has achieved a significant progress in elimination of different issues that pose threat to people's life in different parts of our planet. However, the world still remains a very fragile place where peace can be easily undermined by wars and conflicts. Nevertheless, the United Nations continues to play its key role in ensuring peace and security all over the globe, with the member states taking the lead in this process. Dear delegates, today is a very special day because today you begin an exciting and fascinating journey into the world of the real United Nations. The knowledge and experience that you will get here at WIMUN are truly unique because only here you have an opportunity to plunge into the world of the real United Nations and to experience what it feels like to be a real diplomat. It is truly fascinating to observe such a diverse representation of delegates coming from different countries and backgrounds, but united by a common goal to make our world a better place. I sincerely hope that this conference will become one step closer, bringing you to this goal. I wish you good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. Next, we will hear from Mr. John Daniel Masanke, who is the Assistant Secretary General for General Assembly Affairs and Conference Management, also the individual who is responsible for seating us all here in this GA hall today. Welcome.
This morning, I found out that I had to stand up here and give all of you an inspirational speech. But I thought that I would just give you some sort of logistical instructions, such as picking up all of your garbage at the end of opening plenary, or immediately exiting the UN premises at the end of opening plenary as well. Well, it looks like I got those tasks taken care of. But now back onto the inspirational speech. See, I'm a little confused about that task, because right now we have 1,000 people professionally dressed in the United Nations General Assembly, prepared to solve important global issues such as the protection of women and children, the situation in South Sudan, and the promotion of renewable energy. In front of me are 1,000 eager participants about to simulate the most successful attempt at global cooperation. Frankly, I don't need to give you an inspirational speech. For you to continue to do the incredible work in the coming days and to continue being an important member of your own community. Here's my message. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm incredibly excited for the work that you're about to accomplish, the friendships that you are about to form, and the lessons that you will learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Next, I'm proud to introduce Mr. Ibrahim Il-Kozes, the Undersecretary General for Communication and Public Information.
Can I get a selfie with you guys? Okay.
First, he wants a selfie with all of us.
Okay, now that I've taken care of the important things, let's get down to business. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ibrahim Hussein Qazaz. I am an Egyptian American currently living in Istanbul, and it has been my pleasure to serve you as the Undersecretary General of the Department of Public Information this year. My job has mainly been answering your emails, sending emails to you, and fixing up all these different registration forms this week. But I didn't do it alone. I did it with an incredible team. So many people that I need to thank. Samantha Rodriguez. Yeah, that's it. That's my whole team. I was so proud of all the opportunities that I got to work with Samantha and every moment that I got to work with her and see her passion and her love for this conference. I've gotten to work with an incredible senior secretariat and see their light in every moment, being led by the incredible Angela Hu as our Secretary General. I'm so excited for this conference. But I think the most interesting thing about my job, the most thing that fascinates me, are the frequently asked questions, the FAQs. As you might notice on our website, we actually have a section for FAQs, questions that you all seem to have had on your mind. Like, how do I get a letter of invitation? Or, why do we not have DISEC? And all these different questions that we seem to get. What I also noticed was that FAQs were not something just for a WIMUN conference. They're not just something for an airline website. There's all these FAQs that we have in life. What am I going to do with my life? Why am I here? What am I going to do next? What am I going to graduate and work on next? What's my next opportunity? What mistakes have I made? How can I improve myself? And I noticed that even though we're meant to be a group of different individual, special strangers who don't know each other, who all just came here to learn, we end up having a lot of the same FAQs, the same questions about our own lives. And it intrigues me. It makes me think of how we should remember this before we criticize, before we try to evaluate others. So I encourage you to always remember that even if someone disagrees with you, maybe they're asking the same questions. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, it is my honor to introduce to you Ms. Candace Woods, who is the Assistant Secretary General for Communication and Public Information. Her team and her are the individuals running around with cameras this week, and I'd love to hear what she has to say to our conference participants. Please join me in welcoming Candace.
Guests, faculty advisors, delegates, good evening. My name is Candace. I'm from Australia, and it is my honour to serve as the Assistant Secretary General for Communications and the Department of Public Information for WIMUN 2018. As the ASG for DPI, it is my role to promote not only the global awareness and understanding of WIMUN and WIFUNA, but more importantly, to make sure that your voices and stories are heard and told throughout the entire conference. Sitting in this UN General Assembly, I know a few of us have said it now, we have over 1,000 delegates from more than 40 different countries, making this conference one of the most diverse groups of talented young people to attend WIMUN. Over the past 8 months, the DPI team and myself have had the pleasure of being able to meet all of you through our social media channels. We are now extremely excited to be able to finally meet you all in person. So over the course of this week, myself and the DPI team will continue to stay in touch with you through daily newsletters, social media posts and video uploads. There's actually been a few videos today. This means that you will regularly see my team walking around taking videos and photos of you in committee sessions, UN speakers, and of course, you the delegates. If you have a look around the hall now, you'll see my team scattered around documenting tonight's ceremony. Where are you all? Oh, there we go. So please, if we happen to come into your committee session or approach you for a quick interview, do speak up, share your thoughts and be honest. We want to hear from you, where you're from, your individual stories and your aspirations and your experiences so far here at WIMUN 2018. However, if you don't wish to be filmed, please let us know and we'll respect your privacy. So while the DPI team are reporting, recording and posting WIMUN news, I would like to ask for your help in making WIMUN 2018 trend. I would like to invite you all to take part in the WIMUN movement by following us on social media. Our channels include Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat. When you tag us in your photos with the hashtag WIMUN 2018, which some of you have already begun to do so, your stories will also be featured on our social media live feed and they'll be shared around the world. WIMUN also provides the wonderful opportunity for you all to take away long-lasting memories, professional networks and forge friendships with the young leaders that are sitting around you. So we've also created a special Facebook page that is exclusive for delegates of this conference so that you can share your ideas freely with everyone and be able to stay in touch with each and every one of you after the conference ends. On that note, I'd like to wish you all the very best for the conference and to enjoy the real UN experience. If I can, though, I'd like to take a photo now so I can get this published in our first edition of the newsletter, and then I'll do one quickly for social media that'll be uploaded after this. Could I have everyone maybe put your hands in the air and say, WIMUN? Ready? 1, 2, 3. You can do a bit better than that. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. There we go. And just one really quickly with the iPad. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you again, Candace. Can we have one more round of applause for all the hard work that the Senior Secretariat and all of these Secretariat members on our team have put into making this conference possible? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce a very special guest to our conference, Mr. Robin Schaas, the CEO of WIMUN, a global Model UN conference platform, and one that many of us sitting here today use to register. He is here to recognize the hard work of WIMUNers that have come before us, and at this time, I'd like to invite him to the rostrum. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Schaas.
Distinguished gallery delegates, it's my pleasure to speak to you at the WIMUN 2018 conference opening ceremony, and that's because WIMUN is a very special conference, not just to me. It is very special, for example, because the first award of WIMUN 2018 will be awarded during the opening ceremony and not the closing ceremony. As delegates, you're very familiar with awards in Model UN. Best position paper, honorable mention, best delegate. But what about best conference? Well, at WIMUN, we realized that we're in the position to create just such an award for the first time in the history of Model UN. As the largest MUN network, we ran registrations for over 100 conferences last year and collected thousands of reviews for all of them. And based on this, we think it's time that objective, substantive excellence can be awarded and should be awarded to conferences just as it is awarded to delegates. So, as a community of Model UNers, let us recognize those conferences that truly go above and beyond to provide an authentic learning experience to their delegates. While the awards for the best smallest and medium-sized conferences will go to Poland and France respectively, it seems only fitting that the award for Best Large Conference 2017 should stay here in New York, the homestead of the United Nations. All of this being said, it is my distinct honor to invite the Secretary General of WFUNA, Mr. Gomo Hamadi, to receive on behalf of WFUNA International MUN this award. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's like the Oscars. We won. Thank you so much to Robin and WIMUN for this. Of course, this is a team effort. So I want to thank the ones that have been responsible in no specific order, but we start with the WFUNA team. Bill, and this was for 2017, so Francis is somewhere as well. There, Bill and Francis, thanks a lot. Francis has passed the torch to Finn now, so he has a tall order now. So if we don't win this year, do we know whose fault it is? Obviously, the fantastic WIMUN Secretariat team of 2017 and now 2018, some of them are overlapping. A big thanks to them. And of course, most importantly, to have a successful conference, it's all about the delegates, the participants, and many of you were here last year as well. So, big thanks to all of you for making us win this award. We knew that we were the best, but it's always good to have it recognized. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Schoss. At this time, it is my distinct honor to declare that WIMUN 2018 is officially open and gavel open the conference. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. At this time, we're going to make a transition into what is called an opening plenary. The opening plenary is distinct from the opening ceremonies and actually marks the beginning of our simulation of the real United Nations. At this time, I would like to invite the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Nikhil Goyal, to join me here at the rostrum. And in the meantime, I will also briefly explain that the opening plenary marks the beginning of a General Assembly session. This year is WIMUN's 4th General Assembly session, and during this opening plenary, we will hear remarks from your fellow delegates who have been selected as plenary speakers to represent their respective member states. If you were here as students just an hour ago, now you're officially stepping into the shoes of the member states you're representing and the placards of which you are actually sitting at. At this time, it is my honor to welcome Mr. Nikhil Goyal. Please join me in giving him a warm round of applause.
The first meeting of the 4th session of the WIMUN General Assembly is now called to order. I now invite the representatives to stand and observe 1 minute of silent prayer or meditation. You may all now be seated. It is my great honor to address members at the opening of the 4th session of the WIMUN General Assembly. A very warm welcome to our esteemed delegates, members of the Secretariat, and dignitaries present amongst us for this session. Choices. More than anything else, our ancestors were endowed with the option to pick the color to paint the canvas for the contemporary world. Some of us are unhappy with the choices that others made for us. Well, you have arrived at this particular juncture of your destiny where you have to make a choice for your children. In acting, they say, it's very easy to enact a great script. The real talent is to make a badly written script an on-screen success. Today, I hand you the canvas to paint the future you choose for yourself. I just have one small request. While you all gather to discuss and deliberate to change the course of our future, do so gently, peacefully, and with the utmost care and respect for your fellow members. Whatever battle we have raging inside us, we always have a choice that makes us who we are, and we can always choose to be the right one. I've often heard motivational speakers say, failure is not an option. Well, that in my book is the biggest delusion one must overcome. We fail only to achieve our success with renewed synergy. It's the strong resolve of our leaders who adapted and improvised from the learnings of the Millennium Development Goals as a positive opportunity to give to our present-day world a gift of hope in the commitment towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I believe it's okay to aim high and miss, but it's not okay to aim low and miss. Yes, maybe today the Sustainable Development Goals are the summit above the clouds, and we have just started off the base. I would like to touch upon the theme of our conference, Sustaining Peace. What does it really mean to you? While my speech follows some of our members coming up to deliberate their modern definition of peace, for me, peace lapses with the lack of commitment. When enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything. Then there are no more answers, only better and better lies. And lies are not going to help us in our fight. As nations responsible for our own future, let's live up to the sanctity of our charter and work towards the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which translates as the world is one family. I conclude my address by quoting Thomas DeVar. Our minds are like parachutes. They function only when they're open. Thank you. I now give the floor to the Secretary General, Her Excellency Ms. Angela Min Yeho.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Esteemed delegates, this week in committee, you will be discussing topics that pertain to the theme of this conference, sustaining peace. As we heard from our keynote speakers, sustaining peace is a recent effort here at the United Nations to reframe our traditional understanding of peace. Peace is not only relevant to those affected by armed conflict. In fact, the concept of peace extends far beyond war. Peace must be understood today as a journey that involves every one of us, from the most robust of democracies to the most fragile, precarious regions in our world. This week, as representatives of member states, you will be tasked with the responsibility to develop solutions to pressing global issues, from disaster risk reduction to humanitarian work, from renewable energy to the empowerment of women and youth. I invite you to reflect on our renewed understanding of peace as a multidimensional phenomenon and to appreciate the complexity of the issues on our agenda this week. Please remember that peace is not an exclusive arena for the elite and the powerful. It is the onus of ordinary citizens like you and I to foster everyday peace through inclusion, diversity, and mutual understanding. In fact, our endeavor for peace can start here, at WIMUN's 4th session of the General Assembly. I invite you to demonstrate the values of interpersonal peace, which underpin the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the UN's firm belief in diplomacy. I hope we embody the concept of everyday peace through building constructive partnerships, addressing disagreement rather than neglecting it, and displaying solidarity rather than competition, putting our hopes for peace into action and into words in committee. Please remember, peace is not and cannot be reduced to an empty slogan. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General for her statement. May I invite the General Assembly to direct its attention to Section 2 of the first report of the General Committee, entitled Organization of the Session, which contains a number of recommendations concerning the conduct of meetings and other items of importance. In paragraph 12, the General Committee recommends that the length of statements by heads of political groups should be 3 minutes and individual delegations should be 2 minutes. May I take it that the Assembly takes note of this information contained in paragraph 12 and approves the recommendation that statements should be no more than 3 minutes for heads of political groups and 2 minutes for individual delegates? It is so decided. May I further invite the General Assembly to direct its attention to Section 2F of the report of the committee, entitled conduct of meetings, length of statements, explanations of vote, right of reply, point of order, and concluding statements. In paragraph 14, the General Committee recommends that the length of explanation of vote or position should be limited to 1 minute. May I take it that the General Assembly takes note of this information contained at paragraph 14 and approves the recommendation that explanations of vote or position should be no more than 1 minute? It is so decided. In paragraph 15, the General Committee wishes to notify the General Assembly that the right of reply for any delegation on any item at a given meeting should be limited to 1 minute. May I take it that the Assembly takes note of the information contained in paragraph 15 and approves the recommendation that the right of reply be limited to 1 minute? It is so decided. May I now invite members to turn their attention to Section 3, dealing with the adoption of the agenda. The question of allocation of items will be dealt with subsequently in Section 4. In paragraph 24, in connection with the adoption of Item 5 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 5 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Culture of Peace, Promoting Social Cohesion in Multi-Ethnic and Multi-Religious Societies. May I take it that the General Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 6 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 6 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Coherence in Conflict, Bringing Humanitarian and Development Work Together. May I take it that the General Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 7 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 7 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Disaster Risk Reduction, Building More Resilient Societies. May I take it that the General Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 8 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 8 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Promotion and Protection of Human Rights, Mobilizing Women and Men for Protection of Rights of Women and Girls. May I take it that the Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 9 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 9 be included in the current session under the heading Promotion of New and Renewable Energy Sources. May I take it that the Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 10 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 10 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Empowering Women and Youth. May I take it that the Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 11 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 11 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Harmony with Nature. May I take it that the Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 12 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 12 be included in the agenda of the current session under the heading Building More Effective and Accountable Institutions. May I take it that the Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. In paragraph 24, in connection with adoption of Item 13 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that Item 13 be included in the current session under the heading Promotion and Protection of Rights of Children. May I take it that the Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. The General Assembly has thus concluded its consideration of the first report of the General Committee. I wish to thank all the members of the Assembly for their cooperation. Distinguished delegates, I invite the General Assembly to begin its general debate. I wish to inform delegations that the list of speakers during the general debate is closed, and to remind the delegates that are on the list of speakers that they have 2 minutes to deliver their statement. I now give the floor to the first speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Laos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies and delegates, every 15 minutes, one person on Earth is killed or injured by unexploded landmines. 80% of victims are civilians and 42% are children. Explosive remnants of war are found in over 50 countries and without immediate action will continue to cause devastation. The term sustainable peace marks a conceptual shift to integrate security, development, and human rights as pillars of prosperity and means to permanently eradicate conflict. As a least developed country, the Lao PDR appreciates the role of the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in building sustainable peace. The Lao PDR was the first country to add an 18th SDG to its national agenda, which aims to address specific development challenges caused by unexploded ordnances. Community hardships caused by unexploded devices include loss of arable land, increased medical costs, and forced unemployment. As the most bombed country in the world per capita, the Lao PDR urges governments against reverting to the use of cluster munitions in conflict, and it earnestly supports a world without nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction due to their capacity to threaten life, infrastructure, the environment, and the entire construct of sustainable peace. The Lao PDR acknowledges ASEAN's contributions to the maintenance of peace, security, and stability in our region. It calls on all parties involved in international conflict to exercise restraint and to seek resolution through diplomatic means. The Lao PDR reiterates its commitment to the international community in building a secure, peaceful, just, and prosperous world where all segments of society are carefully considered. Sustainable peace must be implemented through national policy and tailored to withstand extremism, environmental disasters, and fluctuations in the global economy. Strategic planning, ingenuity, and compassion are important tools at our disposal. The Lao PDR calls upon all member states to use them. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Laos for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative from Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Secretary General, dear delegates, good evening. This is my second WIMUN experience. I had a wonderful time last year, and it's a great honor for me to be here today to give you the speech at the WIMUN 2019 GA Plenary. In retrospect, Egypt has experienced the destruction of war, so we know the value of peace. Today, peace is not only the aspiration of all the Egyptian people, but a common pursuit of people from all over the world. As Africa's third-largest economy, Egypt has the capacity to contribute more to the cause of peace worldwide. Short-term peace is easy, but long-term peacekeeping isn't. The structures, attitudes, and institutions that underpin peace are important factors that affect it. In recent years, Egypt has been working hard to seek peaceful policies are in line with our national conditions. Across different agencies, governmental and non-governmental, Egypt makes peacekeeping a priority. But to achieve universal peace, Egypt's effort is only a drop in the ocean and requires the concerted efforts of all the countries around the world. We are expected to commit ourselves to adhering to the treaties and conventions that we've signed and ratified, thereby achieving lasting peace. For example, the Charter of the United Nations, the Geneva Convention, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and so on. The treaties and conventions have been playing an important role in promoting global peace. That's why they are important in playing that role. However, it is undeniable that peace dependent on part terms is fragile. Thus, it requires the sincere attitude and full cooperation of countries and organizations to achieve the true peace. No matter how difficult it is, Egypt will always be a pioneer, not just for the benefit of people in Egypt, but also for the interest of people all over the world. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Egypt for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Secretariat, delegates, observers, colleagues all. Immanuel Kant, in speaking of our human condition, highlighted our unsociable sociability, the human paradox by which we need to live with other human beings, and at the same time we find extremely difficult to live with others without a little source of destructiveness. In this way, he explains much of what we see today, the need we have to live in society and the inevitable conflicts that arise from this coexistence. Peace has been and is one of the most fervent longings of the human race. Despite this, individuals seem to be inevitably oriented towards conflict. Mexico is aware of the essential necessity of assuring peace and recognizes that it is essential to collaborate in an international approach by joining efforts in the same direction to achieve this much desired goal. We live in a critical and costly situation due to an evident increase in violence, especially since 2007. Hence, we must fight against the recurrent waste of opportunities, the persistent corruption, and the lack of reforms and innovative public policies. Then, it is important to remember that peace will not come by itself. Let's look together for truly multidimensional and comprehensive policies and guidelines that dare to go to the root of the endemic evil of violence. Dear colleagues, we are here to be agents of change and to promote the equal availability of opportunities for everyone at any time. It might be true that each country has its own approaches for sustaining peace. However, we must not forget that before replicating models, we must build and generate the spaces of consensus. Diplomats of today, we have many things to address, but just one solution to achieve. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Mexico for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President. The world today, more than ever, seeks peace. Living in a world as diverse as ours, differences are an inevitable and integral part of our society. The preamble of UNESCO states that since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. However, when we think of world peace, merely preventing conflicts and wars is insufficient. What the global community requires is a mechanism to prolong and achieve in its entirety a guarantee for continued peace. Peace is hard to make and even harder to keep. China has been a staunch supporter of and an active participant in UN peacekeeping operations. As a permanent member of the Security Council and the largest developing country, China knows fully well the value of peace. It is a major troop contributor and the second largest financial contributor. With having dispatched a total of around 35,000 troops and 2,700 police to peacekeeping operations, China actively supports international cooperation and works for the reform of the global governance system. It will continue to strive tirelessly to support UN peacekeeping operations. China is an anchor of world peace. Sustained stability of a country with over 1.3 billion people is an enormous contribution to sustaining peace. The past 5 years have witnessed a momentous journey for China. Its continuous progress will bring to the world greater benefits of peace and development. Though it might seem strenuous, if every person, beginning at the individual level, believes that they are citizens of the world before being citizens of their respective nations, the world would be just another step away from achieving sustained peace. And that is the true essence of harmonious coexistence. Thank you.
I thank the representative from China for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative from Afghanistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. In war, whichever side may call itself the victor, there are no winners, only losers. This is especially true when it comes to the raging conflict that has destroyed Afghanistan for the past 3 decades. Dear delegates, the United Nations was created on the aftermath of the greatest conflict in the history of mankind. The organization was an initiative for building international peace and security, developing friendly relations amongst nations, and promoting social progress, better living standards, and human rights. As representatives of our nation, it is our duty to remember these goals and make sure that we collaborate with one another to ensure their fulfillment. The global geopolitical situation has rarely been so agitated. The only way to all be winners in this situation is to work towards ending ongoing war and preventing the escalation of current conflicts. Our energy has to also be directed towards ensuring that conflicts do not arise in the first place. For this reason, we must direct our efforts in achieving the 17 sustainable goals. These goals have been set to transform our world for the better. They represent values that are so profound, they transcend the differences that set us apart, such as nationality, ethnicity, or gender. One of the best ways we could all ensure sustainable peace is to all be included and collaborate towards the common goal of building a better future. Finally, the youth is the largest global population demographic. We arrived in a world shaped by decisions taken by our parents and grandparents. It is beyond our power to undo the mistakes of the past. On the other hand, what is in our power is to ensure that we learn from these mistakes and guarantee that our actions have a positive impact, not just for this generation, but also for the future generations. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Afghanistan for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ecuador.
Thank you, Mr. President. Within the preamble of the UN Charter, we find 4 reasons why the UN was created: protect human rights, maintain the rule of law, promote development, and establish peace and security. Peace and security being one of the most significant. Peace, unlike law and security, cannot be implemented from the top, but must be fabricated into the society from within. Conversations amongst individuals and social divisions, moreover, between the government and its citizens, is the core to success regarding the sustaining peace venture. Peace building became a familiar concept within the UN following Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali's 1992 report, An Agenda for Peace, which defined peace building as an action to solidify peace and avoid relapse into conflict. My country, Ecuador, is acknowledged for its diversity. It is also one of Latin America's most disaster-prone nations. Development and peace have evolved in Ecuador since the 1970s and provide support for the indigenous groups, particularly indigenous women, as they form one of the most vulnerable portions of the population. Ecuador has at least 14 different ethnic groups living in Ecuador. The rights of the indigenous groups are those that exist in recognition of the special status of the indigenous people. These rights include basic human rights, rights of their territory, language, culture, and other elements part of their identity. A few aspects possessed by a sustainably peaceful country. Citation to the Global Peace Index, GPI, in 2017, Ecuador received a score of 1.95, placing it in the 66th position out of the 163 countries included. Based on statistics compiled by the United Nations, Ecuador ranks 3rd safest among the Latin American countries. Corruption, inefficiency, and political influence have plagued Ecuador's judiciary for years. These are a few reasons which limit Ecuador from achieving absolute and sustainable peace, and we commit to this plenary to work towards resolving all elements that disturb peace. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Ecuador for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Chile.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, His Excellencies and Her Excellencies. As the most peaceful country in Latin America, Chile believes that sustaining peace can give us a benefit because in its process, there will be interactions between country, United Nations, civil society, national commissions, and regional actors. Chile concedes that peace cannot be achieved if the state security infrastructure not strong enough to provide the elements which can support a coherent society. Gender inequality, armed violence, and weak state security infrastructures are the source of threat toward the peace stability of Latin American and Caribbean societies. In response, Chile upholds the inclusion of gender perspective in sustaining peace. As a nation, we had a great principle. We respect to the human rights, democracy, we aspire to the peace, international law, treaties, sovereignty, and commitment to cooperate. Chile has a commitment to promote human security by reducing rate of violence, strengthening democratic state institutions, economic opportunity, which we believe it can create strong state security infrastructures. Chile committed to advocate human security efforts via United Nations and regional organizations to sustain peace regionally and globally. Chile admits that we cannot only sustain peace by arms, but also by trust building and run people pro-activities such as deliver medical care and water delivery. Chile believes that political, security, and economic stability can contribute to sustaining peace at national, regional, and international level. Chile suggests that we cannot only sustain peace at national level, but also at regional and international level, because nowadays there are rising of conflict in several regions of the world. We need to create joint efforts between peace-building commissions, Security Council, and Economic and Social Council to sustain peace at international level. We need more multilateralism, cooperation, and dialogue. Last, as the President of Chile, Her Excellency Michelle Bachelet said, let us make a United Nations what our people need and demand. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Chile for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative from Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor standing here speaking as the delegate of Saudi Arabia. Fellow delegates, we are at an unprecedented era in history when the world is plagued by violence, populism, extremism, and instability. Never before have we been acutely aware of the scourge of conflicts, and never before have we realized what can be done to prevent the losses of countless lives. As the world is torn apart by confrontations, we can rise above challenges by sustaining peace. Peace is to be achieved against wars, and more importantly, to be safeguarded and consolidated. Often the traditional concept of peace, restored after conflicts, is under-recognized, under-prioritized, and under-resourced. By focusing on the theme of sustaining peace, we seek for innovative and permanent solutions as precautions against conflicts. Peace sustenance is to ensure social stability instead of merely fixing the devastated world after conflicts. Therefore, sustaining peace is an ongoing process that requires the participation of global community. Peace is the foundation of society, and a cohesive society sustains peace. This is the best of times when different cultures are integrated in globalization. This is also the worst of times when the clashes and conflicts induce sufferings. To nip the buds of conflict, a cohesive society that incorporates social unity and cultural diversity is essential. For that purpose, we have the responsibility to address root causes of inequality, exclusion, poverty, and discrimination, to enforce civic engagement through increased access to administration, to uphold human rights by combating discrimination, to ensure social inclusion and national reconciliation, and to ensure impartial distribution of resources and recognition of different cultures. As a process entailing global participation and arduous efforts of generations, the delegation of Saudi Arabia recognized that sustaining peace is every global citizen's responsibility. It requires our far-reaching vision, which, like a beacon, never submits us to despair, but guides us to thrive in the hope of common prosperity across the world. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Saudi Arabia for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Take a look around. Here, in this chamber, the nations of the world gather under one unifying ceiling. And despite the inevitable divergence of certain policies and perspectives, all 193 member states of the United Nations consistently share one fundamental goal: achieving and sustaining absolute global peace. Peace. The concept is remarkably intricate, involving a nexus of consensus between nations and the social factions within them, the establishment of a harmonic relationship with the natural world and one another on a communal level, and most importantly, the assurance of a prosperous, sustainable livelihood and future for all. Israel acknowledges that diversity is a key element to be considered when pursuing peace. Yet, while valuable in multitudinous ways, if we allow it to, can result in the fostering of societal partitions, which threaten the security of peace. However, hatred does not have to prevail. These divisions can irrefutably be healed through the promotion of mutual tolerance, acceptance, and respect for diversity, locally, nationally, and globally. Israel hence recognizes the exigency of eradicating and preventing the growth of peace-threatening divisions. Such a monumental task would undoubtedly call for cohesive efforts of all member states of the United Nations, as well as the implementation of solutions through United Nations-associated non-governmental organizations. It is essential that all nations appreciate that peace is not an objective achieved overnight, nor one attainable through the actions of a select few nations. Peace is a long-term universal goal, both a responsibility of and an asset for all nations present here today. On a closing note, Israel takes this opportunity to reaffirm its commitment to the preeminent task of achieving global peace and the equally important duty of maintaining it. Israel encourages all members of the United Nations to embark on this same journey, the journey to peace. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Israel for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Estonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies and delegates, 164 million. That is 164 million people in 2017 that required emergency humanitarian assistance due to conflict. That is 164 million too many. At a time where the world needs coherence, action and hope, we sit in a position of change, of opportunity, to cultivate a global culture of sustained peace, but only if we choose to. Whilst we discuss the very nature of peace, there are millions across the globe that live in active war zones, struggling for survival. Here at the 2018 WIMUN conference, we have the capacity to make change happen, and that is an invaluable concept. As a nation that prides itself on actively seeking a role in responding to humanitarian crises, Estonia reiterates the importance of unity and diplomatic means. We realise that the empowerment of women and children in all areas of the globe is a key part of achieving sustained peace. Our strategy for Estonian development cooperation and humanitarian aid works towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. A key principle of this strategy focuses on safeguarding human rights, with a particular emphasis on women and children. Estonia acknowledges that to achieve sustained peace, all members of society must be actively engaged and valued, both during and after conflict. Throughout humanitarian crises, women are often left behind, and we implore the committee to recognise the importance of women in solving humanitarian issues. Inclusion, cooperation, and diplomacy are the tools that will enable us to successfully empower all of society, so that when crises hit, no one is left behind. As we convene for the next 4 days to discuss the very notion of sustained peace, I urge you all to remember that those 164 million people are still out there fighting for survival, and it is our responsibility to support and empower them. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Estonia for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative from Canada.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Secretary General, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As Charles Dickens wrote in his novel, A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Such is the world we live in. On the one hand, we are blessed with material wealth and enjoys abundance of human civilization. On the other hand, terrorism and regional conflicts still pose a threat to the human race. Though we have had such glorious pasts, we only have one future. That's why we're here today. Canada pursues peace based on multiculturalism. Gilly Bahki, a scholar in the University of Ottawa, has pointed out that multiculturalism is a label of many things in Canada. It describes our multi-ethnic cultural mosaic, which represents the policies of the federal government, specifically of cultural diversity. Owing to multiculturalism, our policy emphasizes independence and equality, together with amicability and peace. This kind of amicability and peace is visible when the international community is in crisis. And the Canadian government always stands out, playing a role of a mediator, requesting conflicting sides to settle their differences in peaceful ways. Consequently, we hereby urge all member states to bear in mind that no solution other than peaceful talks and negotiations can truly solve the problem. Canada also makes an unshakable stand against any unilateral military strikes against any member states without sanction of the UN Security Council. It's a violation against UN Charter and will cause the other side to retaliate, only to worsen the situation. Last but not least, Canada emphasizes the importance of applying multilateral mechanism in global governance, which prioritizes the protection of the cultural development of all countries from being violated by hegemonism and cultural colonialism. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we gather here today to address and debate international issues. And I believe many of us are and will be aware that the only way to sustain peace is by peaceful means. And we are here to make it happen. Thank you.
I thank the representative from Canada for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative from Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sustainability seems to be the word of the century, or at least of the last 3 years when the SDGs were presented. Leaders are actively seeking ways to produce sustainable energy, sustainable homes, sustainable food. But what do experts mean when they use the word sustainable? An easy definition would be that something sustainable would not only be viable, but also possess the ability to continue throughout time. Therefore, sustainable peace is a type of peace that will not perish when adversity comes. But have we ever, at any point in history, achieved sustainable peace? Of the past 3,400 years, humans have been entirely at peace for only 268 of them. Many historians argue that everlasting peace is impossible to achieve. Clearly, the facts and statistics do not give us much hope. Even more if, after every single war, humans vowed to end violence forever. 99 years ago, Woodrow Wilson called World War I the war to end all wars. Surely we all wish he had been right. To build a true peace, it should be deep-rooted inside all individuals of society. As quoted in the Agenda of Sustainable Development, there can be no sustainable development without peace, and no peace without sustainable development. And as the UN, one of our main priorities in dealing with a post-conflict zone is to make sure that when all of our forces and representatives have left safe place, the people will be able to uphold peace by their own means. Today, we are all here to achieve a world in which every single man and woman can live freely and without fear. A feeling of security that will be achieved through cultural cohesion, humanitarian and development work, risk reduction, promotion of human rights, empowering of women and youth, harmony with nature, effective institutions, protection of the rights of the children, and helping people in Syria. Because peace should not only be felt the second after the last gunshot has ended. Peace needs to become an inalienable part of every member of society in order for it to last. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Sri Lanka. We have heard the last speaker on my list for the opening plenary. The first meeting of the fourth session of the WIMUN General Assembly is now adjourned. I thank you all for your active participation and cooperation during this opening plenary. The Office of the PGA is always here to support you in any way to make this conference your best experience. I would now like you all to kindly pay very close attention to certain exit instructions by our USC Degacum, Elena Kisilova.
Thank you very much. Dear delegates, so at this moment we kindly ask you to leave the building. So in accordance with United Nations security policy, we can no longer stay here. So please make sure that you pick up all the papers, all the possible trash, all your things. Please do not leave anything here. So no photos, no using of elevators at this time. Please approach the exit. Thank you very much.